Enjoy this Wild Soul Gathering production. I'm Dr. Sandra Marie. Pour yourself a really tall glass of spiritual curiosity and join me for the Happy Hour for the Spiritually Curious podcast. In the spirit of happy hour, cheers to some new insights, peace, revitalization, and perhaps an aha moment that may change your life. Welcome, everyone. In the studio today, I have Maetreyii Ma Nolan, who is a spiritual teacher and a private practice psychologist. She focuses on assisting people to connect with the loving bliss of the divine being and to live lives that reflect that of divine love. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
Maetreyii, you've written a series of books, and I know you're an award-winning author, but you have written your latest book. It's called Into the Heart of the Infinite, a spiritual memoir of extraordinary mystical journeying. That is really a tantalizing title. Can you tell me a little bit about what inspired you to write this particular book?
Well, actually, I had inner guidance to write this book. That I got some inner guidance from my guide inner guru, that it was time to finally get this done. I actually had guidance to write this book as early as 1990, but I never got around to it. But fortunately back then I wrote down a whole bunch of things. It was easier to remember it. So it was time to bring it out. And the reason that I feel that this book is important to bring forward is because I think that a lot of times we relate to other people through story, and by reading other people's stories, we connect with our own story and our own path and our own way. And I hope that this book will affirm affirm people's journey for themselves by reading my journey.
Very nice. It's interesting how the divine nudges us along, and sometimes it takes us more than a few hot minutes to get to where he's been nudging us. So in your book, you write about a unitive consciousness. Now, that's a new term for me. Can you talk a little bit about unitive consciousness?
Unitive consciousness is it's the idea that underlies all of yoga and Eastern philosophy, is that there is one self, one God, one truth, one whole, and that all of us, everything in this world, all of creation abides within that. And so that there is just one eternal existence, and we are manifest within that. So that is that unitive consciousness where all beings have a collective, on a deeper level of our own being, we're part of a collective whole. We the dream of individuality and our own, this world and everything we do here is within a larger context, within the infinite. I call it the infinite. Some people call it God. Some people call it the universe, Brahma.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm definitely the one consciousness, the collective consciousness is a term that certainly I speak of a lot. And I agree with you. We came down here to have this sort of our unique spiritual expression is what we express, I think, sometimes in our singularity on the earth plane of the greater collective consciousness that we're into.
Exactly.
So when you talk about the unitive consciousness, I like that term. Actually, I think I might have to exchange that a little bit more. How does meditation relate to experiencing the unitive consciousness for you?
Meditation has been a way inward. I've used yogic practices and meditation. At first, I tried other ways, but then it really, I think we all have that connection. It's part of us, right? It's natural. We experience it in moments in our life, special peak moments. But when we meditate, we cultivate our ability to calm the chatter in the mind and just sink down into that unitive consciousness if we go deep in our meditation. And so to one degree or another, we come close to that and we feel the love, we feel the bliss, we may feel awe. We connect with that divine consciousness. But it takes concentration and just sort of relaxing all of the everyday engagements and calming the mind. And so there are a variety of meditation techniques that people use to do this. But the idea is to get to a deeper state where you have access to your deeper nature.
Okay, so you mentioned that people do things a little bit differently, and how they get there might be a different path. So right now, there's a lot happening globally, and I certainly know that you have a pretty significant global footprint, and we can get into that a little bit also maybe. But there's many people, especially at this current time, that seem to be going through awakening experiences in higher levels than we've seen before historically on the planet. And for some, it's very conscious, and for many, it's unconscious, but this awakening experience is still happening for them. So, as a spiritual teacher, and I know you've been at this for a really long time, how do you think we can best support these newly awakening people at this particular time with everything that's going on?
There's a lot of podcasts, which are ways to reach people, and books. And that's why I put my book out.
Yeah.
These are ways that we can reach people and do what you're doing. Bring the love, the wisdom, the understanding, support people in believing in themselves, because we're in a transition of consciousness. And actually, it's not just a transition, it's a transformation. And when you have transformation, you move from one frequency level to another. And I think we're doing this collectively. But what happens when you have transformation, whether it's personal or collective, and I do talk in my book about spiritual transformation a lot and what that means. But when you have transformation, you're changing levels. And so there's a lot of deconstruction that goes on in the process where for your old way of being to fall away and you to really come to a new level of your own inner understanding. A lot of times there's a turmoil
Yeah.
because what has been is falling away and what is going to be is beginning to form. And I think we're in that process collectively. And so I think I would really support people. The most important message I feel is to let people know to believe in themselves, to believe in their own experience, to know that there is love and that there is support, and that the collective consciousnesses or the unitary whole is a supportive wholeness of being that really supports your transformation and supports your being as you go through tough times when they come about. And I think we've had such a material culture that sometimes it's hard for people to believe in their inner experience, believe in love, believe in themselves, because we've been taught to believe in material gain and things that are objective out in the external world. And so people sometimes negate their own personal inner experience and their own mystical experiences, which kind of maybe defy their outer outer belief systems or the society in which they live. And so I think people need support to really go within, to believe in themselves, to believe in the divine, to believe in the miracles in their own life and the magic in their own life and the guidance that's there for them.
I think that those are very profound words, and I would agree that we have got caught up into a very material world, and we're seeing a lot of that fall apart. And I love how you talk about being how we're supportive collectively. But for individuals who are new to this, it may not feel that way, and it may feel very uncomfortable for them because they're removing themselves into that singularity of it, right? Not that collective type of feeling. I also like how you talked about transformation being an increase in energy, an increase of that vibration and frequency. So I will tell you that I also feel like we're going through a transmutation as well as a transformation as a humanity and as a planet, and probably a little bit of a different conversation. So speaking to someone who's an individual where that may sound maybe, a little bit blah blah, yeah, the collective is supporting me, but I feel like I'm drowning. What did it feel like for you personally? Can you sort of put it on a personal level a little bit about how your transformation felt for you personally? And I'm sure it was a little different at different aspects of your life because it's an ongoing process.
Yes. um, I it was I went through a lot of struggle, and I point that out in my book, and I think that's true for most of us. That change brings stuff up. It brings up all our barriers, all the things that hold us back, and I'm not good enough. And for me, it was like, um, especially when I got guidance to teach, I felt um, the way that guidance came. I just felt, oh, this can't be real. So I began to doubt my inner guidance. I began to doubt my personal experience. I began to not trust. Um, and the thing that put me in that doubt and lack of trust was bringing my inner self, my spiritual self, into alignment with my external world. I had always had, I was a psychologist, I had 2 children, I was, had a a good external life, and I was successful, but I kept my inner guidance and my spiritual life personal, and I didn't really bring it up with people. I was a very open person psychologically, but not about my inner guide and not about my states of consciousness that I had experienced. And I think that's true for a lot of us, that this stuff is somewhat taboo in our culture, that not everybody's going to just accept it. So you might want, people feel they can't talk about it, that they can't bring it out. So when I was guided to teach, the challenge I think that was really there for me was to bring my inner self and my spiritual self out into the world and start being open about it. And that was a big challenge for me. And so I went into doubt, I went into fear, I went into uh, not trusting the divine, not trusting my inner guide. And that was put me in a terrible place for a while. And I went through some difficult period where I was having panic attacks, and now it was terrible because I was rejecting everything. And then finally, after a few months, I gave in and I said, okay, maybe I'm crazy. I think there was a fear of going, that I'm abnormal and going crazy. And so then I just sort of went, well, okay, if I'm crazy, I'm crazy. I'm madly in love with the divine and with this presence that I feel and this guidance. And I have, what was a problem for me was I was guided that there was this Guru Shakti and this teaching to bring through. But nothing was happening on the outside. So I thought, I don't see any proof of this. This is a delusion, right? But in fact, I was also guided that would take a few years to manifest, and it did. And after a few years, this guidance, which I just feel sort of downloads, from a higher plane, from my Baba. I don't think about it. It's a little like channeling. I don't call it channeling because I don't think I'm channeling another person. I think it's the higher self, that unitive whole coming through a form which I understand and relate to, but the guidance comes through, and I don't think about it. It doesn't come from the rational mind. It doesn't come from this ordinary level that we figure things out and plan what we're going to say or whatever, and it brought up a huge emotional challenge for me. And I do think that that was my personal path and my personal challenge. I think that these same feelings are there for a lot of people. We tend to, if our inner experience is a little bit out of line with the society norm, we can doubt ourselves. And
I like to call it coming out of the spiritual closet.
yeah,
And we, a lot of times I would just ask people, like, do you remember that time of life when you just decided, like, I'm coming out of the spiritual closet? And I talked once on the show and I said, I really felt like I was out of the spiritual closet. And in some of the interviews and discussions I had with people and topics that were coming up, I realized that I really wasn't fully out of the spiritual closet.
wow.
So I do think I am now, but who knows? Something may come up and I'll go, perhaps not.
Yeah. It's because we have such a material-based culture. Our science was materially based for the last 400 years. And we're only now through new science and physics, we're beginning to come to an understanding of the universe in a different way. And I think we are at a point where some of our locked down black and white understandings of things are beginning to soften. But it is scary because the fine line between, I worked for years for something called the Spiritual Emergence Network or Spiritual Emergency Network. And the fine line between the psychosis and delusion and mysticism and vision, it's like, where's that line? How do you know what side of that line you're on? How do you know that your experiences are valid and not a delusion? How do you know to trust what you're receiving? How do you know to believe? And so these are the doubts that pour in from our society, which is very sort of a little bit rigid about what's reality and
Right.
what
They
isn't.
like to put you on meds.
Yeah. But
So I think that's a really valid point because I'm sure there's people listening to this podcast who question that.
Yeah, you question yourself, right? You question the validity of what's happening to you, particularly if you have mystical experiences or you receive divine guidance, what's real? And I think in a less material culture, we would have less issues with that. But in our culture, that it's unacceptable. Sometimes
I would agree.
mysticism is unacceptable.
I would agree. Where in one culture, in an Eastern culture, it might be revered. Here, you might end up in a mental hospital, and I don't say that sarcastically. So that being said, would you be willing to share one of your mystical experiences? You've brought it up a few times. I know that you write about it in your book.
I
And I think that it would be interesting to hear one of them. I put you on the spot
for
there.
me, it's okay. For me, my path evolved from uh, during my meditation. Actually, it started when I was young, that I had some experiences of a divine presence, and then during my meditation, and this touching in and out of this divine presence was flowing in and out of points of my life, and I was so drawn to it. But there were times when I felt like I reached for the stars and crashed and burned. And then when I was in my early 20s, this presence came to me, and I felt such love and such fear of that I was insane, because I lived in Southern Illinois and I didn't know anything about anything. And I thought, maybe I'm crazy. Nobody listens to inner voices, and but I had this incredible guidance, and with it, when this presence came, it was so beautiful that I just fell in love. And it was a deep, holy presence and he said that he was to Baba, to call him Baba. During that time, a lot of mystical experiences happened where I went into a deep state of connection to the divine, and I would go into deep states of unitive bliss, and then I would come out of it and I would move into states of doubt and worry that I was going insane, and I was flowing in and out of these two cycles. And then I felt but outer circumstances seemed to flow along with it. But I felt that the inner guru was this Baba who had come, this holy being, was all that I had ever imagined. It was a love that was stronger than any human love I had ever experienced or knew about. And it was like it was Baba was love personified. And it went through a period of going in and out like that, and then a period of where every word that was spoken became a drop of divine quality, like perfect love, absolute love would be embodied in a single word, dropped into my mind like a drop from the eternal. And then a word would be a drop of absolute justice, absolute beauty, like a crystal with different facets. And each of these divine qualities would just sort of drop into my mind. And each one was so stunning. It stuns the mind, because these qualities in human life are like dimmed compared to in divine presence. It's like this world is black and white compared to color. It was so intense, so exquisite. And it's hard to even exist in the presence of such holiness, such exquisiteness. It's when I've really experienced it deeply, it just brings tears to the eyes. And you can't really be in that presence in your normal self. It just is so beautiful. It's beyond knowing. And
Well, thank you for sharing that.
yeah, that
Um,
that's my experience of the divine.
wow, it just sounds so absolutely beautiful. For the average person out there who is just trying to figure this all out, how would you give some recommendations to assist them with accessing divine consciousness?
Meditation is really cultivating a practice to be in silence, to open your heart, to let go and surrender. We spend most of our life fearing what we don't want and trying to acquire what we do want. And this is actually the human condition of suffering, because it's a struggle, right? And
Yeah.
we're always trying to push one thing away and trying to grab another, and we never fully succeed, and then we get old and we die, and we don't win that game. But contacting the infinite is not that process of acquiring. If you try to grab it, it's much larger than you, and it's going to just flow through your fingers. What you can do is let go, surrender. Just say, I'm here. Open your heart and just listen. Guidance may come to you in all kinds of ways, through a bird chirping, through the sun coming out at a certain moment, I remember one person said when they would think they needed guidance, they'd inevitably see a signpost that would say something that was the guidance they needed. The divine is everywhere and speaks to us in many ways. For me, it speaks as an inner presence of a voice. But we can feel that presence and we can open to it wherever we are. And meditation is the way to allow yourself to sort of get over all of the things you're normally involved in your life and quiet the mind through a spiritual practice, and bring yourself to a place where you can settle in and begin to open. And hopefully your meditation practice is not rote and from the head, intellectual, but something that comes from the heart, something that is opening you to higher consciousness, to the infinite. And I think that is what's needed, and guidance. If you need a teacher, if you need guidance to have a good practice that will actually work for you, and find inspiration, books, podcasts, things that will inspire you and support you in the
Well,
process.
thank you for that. So, speaking of podcasts, tell me about your Baba Talks. Or maybe I should go back. You've mentioned Baba a couple of times in our brief conversation today. Tell me a little bit about Baba and your Baba Talks.
Okay, well, I have an inner guide, and he guided me that his name is Baba. I also have a physical guru who has left his body at this point, but his name was Sri Sri Anandamurti. He lived in India, and I spent time with him as well. And I felt a resonance between the inner guru and the outer guru, though I think both of those presences, really, the one embodied in my physical guru and the other in this subtle guru, they emanate from divine presence. And I think that that's really there for people, and finding that's important. The podcasts are these talks I give I call them Baba talks, because I just open to that divine presence and that inner guidance, and I sort of melt back into it, and then this flow of comes and a talk is given. And so I do those talks once or twice a week at this point, and people record them. And I have a babatalks.info, which is a station they're on, and then they're in my YouTube channel also. And they're also on my website on yogama.org, where I have
Okay.
a lot of them.
So, I'll let you go through that one more time. If the listeners want to learn more about you and work with you, you've mentioned a couple of things. Can you sum that up a little bit, and what all you offer and what you do?
Probably the best way to reach me is through my website, which is yogama.org. And I have a satsang once or twice a month on Saturday mornings that I've just begun recently. I have another one on Monday mornings, but that's a little closed. I have a newsletter and information that I send out regularly. at least once a month. And if you sign up for my newsletter, just write a message to me if you want to contact me or you have a question for me personally, and I'll get that and I'll respond to you. And if you come to the satsang on Saturday morning, that's another way to have a time when I'm there for people personally, if you want to talk to me. So,
And what's a satsang?
the satsang includes, I do a Baba talk, a spiritual talk, and I lead a meditation. And my husband usually does a few chants, Sanskrit chants. He's a kirtan singer. And it's a nice sort of spiritual event to come to for inspiration.
Very nice. It sounds, I can sort of feel the peace.
Yeah, and there's questions and answers if people want to talk or ask for anything. And I teach meditation to people, but you need to get in touch with me about that if you want to learn a practice and study.
Okay. I'll make sure that I include all of your information and all those contacts in our show notes so that the listeners will be able to access that from you. Is there any other excerpts or parts of the book that you would like to share with the listeners? It's a very tantalizing title, so I don't know what else you'd like to tantalize them with.
It's a book about spiritual journey, and I go through a series of mystical experiences, and as it evolves through my journey, I think it brings you through an evolution of consciousness, which some people reading it find they move through that with the book into more of that unitive state of wholeness. And it really brings through my mystical experiences. I hope that can bring that same experience for other people of their mystical life and support it. So I don't know that any details are there that stand out for me at the moment.
Okay. Well, you said it has a little bit of an energetic stamp to it, so that there's going to be some energy exchange that goes with this also.
Yeah, I have gotten very, very good reviews from everybody who's read it.
Okay. So, any last words of wisdom? You have much wisdom that you would like to leave for the listeners at this time.
Believe in yourself, trust yourself, be open to divine guidance and presence. And if you don't have a meditation practice, find a teacher and begin meditating. I think
important words.
Yeah, to connect to wholeness within you.
Very nice. So, Maetreyii, I want to thank you for sharing all of your wisdom. You certainly have dedicated your life to this, both when you were in the closet and when you chose to come out of the closet and help the rest of us in humanity. So thank you for that. I would also like to thank all our listeners out there. Thank you for joining us today. And remember, embrace that wild soul. Until next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful to be here.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Wild Soul Gatherings Happy Hour for the Spiritually Curious. To learn more about our guests, please go to our website, wildsoulsgathering.com. We're very eager to hear from our listeners what you thought of the episode, topics you might like us to cover in the future, your thoughts on spirituality, questions you may have. Please feel free to send us an email at wildsoulsgathering@gmail.com. This is your host, Dr. Sandra Marie, sending each of you peace and love. Until we meet again, embrace your wild soul.